Welcome to episode 1 of the Score podcast, the show where visual intelligence meets sport and AI. I'm Lilly Douse and I'm fully integrated in the tech industry, but this project really caught my eye. And in this series, we're exploring how Score is building the optic nerve of AI. By turning hours of sports footage into constructed data, Score is building a next-gen football AI. And it's rewarding its community of miners for high-quality annotations. In today's episode, we'll look at how Score came to life.
Oh, that's a funny story.
Why decentralized infrastructure matters.
Allows us to leverage a global, decentralized network of talent.
How Bittensor's subnet initiatives create a competitive edge.
The theoretical speed which we can operate even as it stands right now. It's entire games in seconds.
And an exciting prediction from our CEO, Max.
I think we're going to find the next Ronaldo.
Later, I'll be joined by former Premier League manager Brian McDermott to talk football.
It sounds a little bit far-fetched, but that could be something that could really work.
Including a look at the FIFA Club World Cup that kicked off this weekend.
When I used to play, we used to have 8 weeks off and I used to come back sort of half a stone overweight. But those days have gone massively. And you do look at it and you think, wow, how can these guys keep going?
Just for our viewers out there, we are recording this at Monday at 10:30 a.m. Let's welcome our guests, Max, CEO, and Tim, CTO of Score. Great to have you both with us. How is it going?
Yeah, thanks, Lily. You're doing pretty well. Pretty excited to be recording this first episode.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, great to be on here with you, Lily.
No, this is super exciting for me as well. As I say, I do a lot of stuff in tech, but there really hasn't been many amazing sports projects that I've been keen to hear about, but this one is definitely one of them. So why don't we hear, Max, exactly how you guys and Tim came together and came up with this concept?
Oh, that's a funny story. I think we've all been working around, tech and AI in particular for a few years. On mine, more on the in the financial industry, but still in the in a collective intelligence way. So I co-founded a project that was focusing on building AI for hedge funds, banks, and sovereign wealth funds, using the power of the crowd, so to speak. I met Tim and our other co-founder, Nige, a few years ago. They were also working in tech, but I would say more in the sports industry and indeed entertainment industry. But I'll let Tim do his intro. But yeah, at some point, everything kind of converged, and we realized that what we were all doing, on our lanes could be merged, and could provide value for an industry that is yet to be disrupted.
I met Max through Nigel, who is the other co-founder, who is can't be on the podcast today. Nigel and I go way back. So we started working together about 20 years ago, working actually within e-commerce for a menswear fashion brand led by Liam Gallagher. So Nigel and I had worked together for a long time, have a deep amount of trust and a great working relationship. And over the course of scaling that business and then exiting that business, Nigel and Max started to work together on a project. I believe it was something around Binance, or they met in the Binance offices or something. So we were all working sort of in and around Web3 with our own sort of specialties outside of Web3 specifically. And then we all connected really, and for a good number of years now have been working on various different projects together. So, Matt co-founded a couple of projects, worked heavily at a company called Human Protocol and CrunchDAO. And Nigel and I both worked with him at both of these projects. So we've sort of got this great working relationship. And over the years, we've really discovered between us, we complement each other's skill sets very well. I'm more technical, Max is growth and AI and crypto, and Nigel's partnerships and an extensive network through his number of years operating. So that's it's sort of funny how we've come together. We're all big football fans, and essentially individually, I guess, and then collectively, through working within these various sectors, we discovered well, we started to see an opportunity start to arise, really. We sort of, on one hand, we're exposed to AI and how disruptive AI was within various industries. We could see how particular sports like F1 specifically and some of the American sports were really adopting data and AI and moving forward at a very rapid pace. And then through our exposure to football, we could see that there was opportunity there, and I think that really formed the foundation of an itch that we wanted to scratch and started to dig into, and ended up going down a bit of a rabbit hole with AI and football, and out of that, I guess, grew the concept of score. Max, maybe you'd like to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So what we realized is that, and it's kind of counterintuitive, is that football, and for some people it's called soccer, but let's call it football for the sake of this podcast, is a massive market, as we all know. But the way data is collected, processed, and also is used to get insights is quite, I would say, running behind what's been kind of the standard in other sectors, like like in finance or just pure tech. So after having a lot of conversations with people like Brian, who's on our team now, and really proud of having Brian on our team, and other people from other clubs, scouts or agents, we realized that bringing this kind of fresh approach to data to this world would definitely make a lot of people's lives easier. And I think this is how you want to, attack a business problem. You want to really understand at first the problem and then see if you could really bring something that would make people's lives easier. And that's the case. And the beauty of the way we are attacking the problem is that we are setting up a community of really, really smart people that are trying to tackle machine learning problems, so AI problems, that are going to bring new products for football people. When I say new product, maybe you'll have other questions about that, Lily. But I think scouts, scouting people, finding new talents, recruitment, that's very important. So being able to go through a large amount of data in a very fast and, I would say, user-friendly way, which is a challenge. Also, I would say real-time insights for managers, trying to understand what's happening on the pitch, what could happen next, and then making decisions during, in game, basically. And also, obviously, people are going to think about transfers or even, sports betting or stuff like that, which are other verticals. But the real problem, I would say, if I can frame this, the end game or the thing we think about when we work on a daily basis is how would you find the next Messi? How would you find the next Ronaldo? Is there someone on the planet that is good enough to be a legend in this sport, but doesn't have access to the opportunity because of the lack of a scaffolding of an infrastructure around the data? So that's pretty much where we started. Obviously, the journey now is a bit different and it's growing fast, and we're really excited. But yeah, if people can remember anything, is that I think we're going to find the next Ronaldo.
Oh, that's a big statement. I think that's probably something you're going to come up people asking is, why AI and sport? Why is AI so necessary in sport? Obviously, we already have the infrastructure there with human beings being involved in scouting. Why do we need this extra layer in the sporting industry?
I think Tim can also jump in here, but the reality is everything now is recorded through video. But it takes ages for a human being to go through the videos. I mean, and also just one thing, it's a huge difference between collecting information, just saying like a player is running fast, or a player has put a header. It is just like a fact, and there's a huge difference between stating a fact and then understanding if it's going to fit within a certain formation, or if the player is the right player for a certain team, or so I think the AI is probably going to bring to people like Brian, I would say a smart or let's say a smart notification system, so to kind of keep things easy, that would just nudge him and say, oh, you are looking for a midfielder for this team that could do X, Y, and Z. We think we found it in Peru, for instance. And this is why AI is valuable, because AI, to achieve this, AI is going to go through 10,000 of hours of footage in probably a few minutes, when human beings, are trying to do this for years and are not achieving this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I feel like and Brian and I have spoken about this a number of times. We feel like the human element of scouting in that particular use case is still going to be massively important. We don't see this as replacing humans within this ecosystem. Just as Max mentioned, we see this more so as really leveraging the inherent capabilities that AI provides. So really being able to analyze data at a scale which humans just cannot, and to look for patterns within data at scale, to really enable people like Brian and his protégés to do their job better. To find people that potentially were not findable previously, or to identify patterns that maybe weren't able to be identified before. And that's where we see us really enhancing the football ecosystem.
Yeah, and also just to add something, AI is not going to kind of put everyone on the same foot. That's not what we're trying to do. I think AI has to be bespoke, so everyone is going to have their own version of the same system, if that makes sense. Because in the end, we all want to win, but I think there's different ways of winning. And I think AI has to be a facilitator. It doesn't have to be something that is going to just make everyone's playing the same way, or because I think this is something we can also dread about AI. Is like, is everyone going to play the same way? Absolutely not. But people need a better infrastructure to get to new players or new opportunities.
Let's take a little bit of a deep dive into some of the tech behind also what you're building. So why did you guys choose Bittensor?
Bittensor is this very interesting emerging technology, which essentially like it leverages blockchain, or it uses blockchain, but I wouldn't say it's really about blockchain. So why did we choose Bittensor? Bittensor essentially allows us to leverage a global decentralized network of talent. It enables trustless scoring, so it enables us to work with anyone in the world on these problems, but be able to evaluate the work that they're doing appropriately. And it gives us scalable access to GPUs, so to compute globally. And this is very different, or this is like a big advantage, I would say, over some of the centralized startups that are operating within this space, who have to go out and hire machine learning engineers who are expensive and generally bound to local networks. And then they also need to find the compute globally, which can also be another challenge. So Bittensor really enables us to solve those challenges, or gives us a big advantage within those two specific challenges.
Well, I think we need to think about the way you can do AI in a closed way and the way you can do AI in an open way. As Tim said, having access to talent and also to compute is probably one of the hardest thing companies are trying to achieve at the moment. And leveraging Bittensor was a way for us to really skim through these problems without really having to, I would say, mobilize a lot of resources from a monetary perspective, but also from an HR perspective. Yeah, that's pretty much what Bittensor is. And a lot of people are talking about the token or anything related to blockchain, but as Tim said, it's just really like a beautiful way of setting up the rules of a competition that sets the incentives in the right way, so people just hang around, stay around and try to really compete and get the lion's share. And honestly, it's beautiful just as it is. You could argue that not a lot of things are happening on chain, yada yada yada, but the reality is, blockchain, I mean, I would say, except for Bitcoin, probably was always a way to kind of create new economies. And Bittensor just creates like one of the most beautiful machine learning / AI economy. So I think we before joining Bittensor, again, I was working on another project that was not similar, but kind of. And you know the famous sentence, if you can't beat them, just join them. We joined Bittensor.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's really key to highlight that when we talk about blockchain, it is all about the technology, decentralized technology, which is key in infrastructures like yours and integrating the sports world. Obviously, it's really key that we're talking about winning. So what does winning mean at Score?
I mean, it means everything for us. Again, the very concept of Bittensor is trying to be the best 24/7, trying to bring the best model, trying to bring the best, the more compute, or probably the most intelligent way of combining, models and compute to kind of get, all the rewards. It's a very meritocratic environment. So I think in the very early days, combining our, the love we have for sports and also the love we have for this kind of collective intelligence system, we kind of had to set, winning as the kind of North Star of our company. Winning doesn't have to be something toxic that overwhelms people, if I'm honest with you. Winning is just about trying to get better, trying to do better, trying to be, leaner in your operations, smarter in the way you're pushing your code, trying to, it's like when you're on X, you're limited by the number, I mean, you were before limited by the number of characters you could put on a post, and it pushed you to kind of come back with a better version of your post every single day, trying to sound smarter, and then with saying fewer words. It's pretty much the same thing, always trying to be better. I think it's a journey. Winning is just about trying to understand how you want to win as well. Some people would try to do everything they could, and they could find exploits and try to game systems. I would say at Score, we're trying to win, and that's the reason as also we are sports fans, is because sportsmanship is very important for us. So we try to win, but with a nice way of winning. We want to. It's like PSG, at the final against Inter. They won. They put 5-0, and then they were gentlemen on the pitch. They weren't trying to belittle the opponent. They just went through, I think, the best football we've seen for years. But then they just were, in the end, that was just a game. And as you can see now, because they're playing the Club World Cup, they're going out again. They're just, it's another game and another game and another game. So I think that's the beauty of winning. You can just be happy about what's happening, what's happened today. You could be also happy about losing a game once, and then try to understand what you could do better.
And then for anyone that's new to this, has joined in this podcast, let's explain a little bit what is annotation and what is the ultimate dream for Score.
Okay, so I'll cover off what is annotation. So essentially, when we talk about annotation, we specifically mean turning raw footage, so raw football broadcast videos, into structured data. So we essentially identify players, the ball, and where the pitch is. And that essentially allows us to infer a whole bunch of different information about every second of the game. So we know who's doing what, we know where the ball is, we know how fast people are running, how their pace changes over the course of the game, we know who's got the ball, we know who they're passing it to. So there's like an enormous amount of information which can be inferred essentially from this core annotation data. So that's what we refer to when we talk about annotation, and we're doing this now. Our miners are doing this now, really very quickly and at scale. So they're able to annotate or understand what's going on within a 30-second clip, within under 2 seconds, sometimes 1 second. So that means scaled up to a full game, they can really have a full understanding, or create the annotations for that game, within a couple of minutes maximum, which is impressive.
Just for people to understand how we go from annotating data to finding the new Ronaldo, we have a process that is set up in 3 steps. So the first one is you collect the data, so you annotate the data. You're doing it really fast because you want to be able to do it real time as well. It's very important for people to understand that point. Then the second step is about simulating the data. So when we say simulating, is people probably understand, we build visual models that are able to understand what happened in real life, but then also that are able to understand what could have happened or what should have happened differently during the game. So they're learning from players' mistakes or even movements, to kind of really get what football is from a math perspective, so to speak. And then the third step is you combine both. I'm just trying to make it easy to understand. You combine both, and you can attribute a score to any movement, any players, and then you're just able to get any sort of video and go and make it go through this process. And you can say, oh, this player would be interesting there, yada yada yada. So this is how you go just from one video clip to a system that can help you navigate through the data.
Wow. I remember going for my first meeting with Nigel, and my mind was blown listening to the principles of what you guys are doing. So hearing it from you guys as well, it's absolutely incredible. I think it really does revolutionize the game, give chances to people that maybe might have not have been noticed before. As you were saying, people can't send scouts throughout the world, so it enables you through just a video to be able to see how a player potentially can operate within a team. It's now time for a DKING update. What's happening across the Score ecosystem, Max?
We've announced a huge partnership in Paris at Proof of Talk. So we kind of presented all of our tech to different customers and people within the ecosystem. And one of the biggest sports hedge fund decided to kind of work with us and allocate a large sum of AUM on our predictive analysis. That is a big sign for us of telling us that we are on the right path. Obviously, in this industry, you always have different I would say income streams. You could work with clubs, you could work with data companies, you could work with hedge funds. It was easier for us to start with this, but it's a figures deal. So I think it kind of gives you a sense of the trust they're putting onto our tech, and that's going to massively help us keep building for the clubs as well. So that's pretty positive. We're all excited about that. And also there's a nice partnership that we've announced with 6TV that's going to allow us to process. I think it's north of like 400,000 games from top clubs and top leagues, which is also going to be a way for us to build one of the biggest and most current data sets around football. So it's super exciting for us. And from a tech perspective, pure tech, deep tech, I would let Tim add that. Yeah, the subnet, to keep talking about Bittensor, is doing pretty well. But maybe Tim, you wanna chime in?
Yeah. So look, I mean, ultimately, we the subnet runs 24/7. Like it is literally a 24/7 thing where we have miners doing work 24/7. We have other miners that are trying to exploit the system 24/7. So us and the team have made great strides in the last couple of weeks, especially in really hardening the subnet up. So our ultimate aim is to, like Max was saying, is to really ensure that the quality is as good as human annotation level quality. But also be able to do it at the speed which humans cannot achieve, which opens up that whole possibility of, like we were talking about earlier, annotating games or getting data from games, globally, all the way down the leagues, to really expose those people to, to the global sort of football network. So that's what we're working on constantly on the subnet. Like Max said, we're putting through the new data through the new subnet now, which has been a big step forward for us. And we've got a roadmap of obviously general improvements that we're working on to, again, increase the accuracy and increase the throughput of what we're doing.
It's super exciting. And then in terms of scalability, how scalable is this? How much footage do you have to access? I know you just mentioned all of these games that now you're going to have access to, and how fast can just one match be annotated?
Yeah, so as Max mentioned, we've got access to 280 leagues across 3 seasons, which is many hundreds of thousands of games. So there's plenty of data for us to be working with. And we're working through this at an increasing rate, with a view to effectively having this enormous data set of annotation data around football, which becomes immensely valuable the bigger it gets. The speed at which we can do games currently, one miner can process a full game in a couple of minutes. But we can break that game down and run it in parallel across multiple miners. So really the speed at which we can operate, the theoretical speed which we can operate even as it stands right now is, it's entire games in seconds if they're done in parallel, which is amazing. And that's something that we're looking to really apply to this large data set that we've got access to.
To give people a breath of what that means, our competitors are using, I would say, as we say in AI, human in the loop, to do the same thing. And most of the time, it takes them probably 5 hours to annotate a full game. And we're talking about doing this in seconds. So it kind of gives you like a full understanding of how disruptive this tech is, and also how it unlocks real-time, intelligence, which is one of the most complex thing to do in football.
That is absolutely incredible. I do find myself sometimes watching back at like classic matches from like 20 years ago, and just when you watch that and compare it to now, how far technology has advanced, something like this just showcases how many leaps and bounds we are making forward, and how something like this is so necessary, because AI is the future and you need to be on top of that. So being able to do it in seconds is kind of mind-blowing, but also absolutely awesome. So now we're going to get to hear from the man who inspired much of this. That is Peter Cotton. His work in finance played a major role in Score's formation. So let's listen to this clip.
One of the things that distinguishes Score is that we're taking an approach to football that's a little bit reminiscent of some approaches used to master chess and Go and other arenas in the past. And we really want to move beyond kind of ad hoc assessments of what's going on the pitch. And what we're developing is a deep neural network approach to try to assess exactly what the advantage any team has in a given position. And that's really the secret sauce. I think it's going to revolutionize football. I really do. I think that football is an extremely nuanced game where the opportunities and decisions made by players at any second are very hard to discern and boil down into traditional metrics. And it's exactly the kind of situation where a neural network can actually gain a comprehension of the situation that eventually is going to be far superior to humans. I've had a very long-term interest in analytics applied to sport, actually, a lot of different sports. And I've developed and maintained packages and built algorithms for everything from trying to evaluate or build rating systems for teams to price exotic bets and so on and so forth. So having finally have a chance to see some of that being used in anger is just fantastic. I think that the tie-in to deep learning is very interesting too. One of the things, and it goes back a long way into things I've been interested in. In fact, coming out of undergrad, I spent a lot of time working on the mathematics of symmetry, Lie groups in particular. And that's an obscure area of mathematics that I'm sure very few people care about. But when you look at a football field, there's a huge number of symmetries that enable you to think about the problem differently. So I'd say there's a lot of very long strands that get kind of pulled together in this project, a lot of things I've tinkered with over the years. And so for me, that's extremely satisfying. And I also have been a close observer of developments that are analogous in chess. Being a chess player myself, I witnessed that evolution. I actually watched Garry Kasparov in his losing battle in New York against the computer. And I can see very clearly the way this is going to go with football.
Incredible insights from Peter. You'll be hearing more from him throughout this series. So now let's move on into what's happening now across the SCORE ecosystem. Max, take it away.
Yeah, so we're trying to obviously, so as you heard, that the tech could do a lot, right? And I think sometimes it's even hard for me to kind of realize that we started this journey. I mean, the very specific tech we're talking about in January 2025, that was launched in January 2025, so not too long ago. But it's moving so fast that we are now also thinking about providing the same approach to other verticals. That's the reason why you probably heard about SCORE being the optic nerve of AI. We have a thesis that is kind of the basis of our ecosystem, is that we want the world to have access to an affordable, accurate and fast computer vision layer, obviously open source. It's very important. And the thesis is built around something very simple. If you take any, let's say, CCTV or smart city program, for instance, a city like Dubai, they don't need SCORE, right? They have all the money in the world. They can do whatever they want. By the way, you can also say this for top clubs, or you can even say this for top hospitals in the world. They're probably using very advanced medical imagery, systems. They don't need SCORE. But if you think about a Pareto, I think everything in life is pretty much a Pareto. There's probably millions of people, millions of organizations in the world that would need to have access to very, again, smart, fast, affordable computer vision layer to process their footage, to be better at, preventing shoplifting in malls or, whatever. So I think this is how we're going to build our ecosystem. I think we're going to keep, being champions in the world of football, because we just love that. But we also really, we're really excited about bringing other people to come and build on top of what we're doing, give them access to our infrastructure, give them access to what Bittensor can provide, and also just contribute to the world. It's going to be open source. So for us, it's obviously we're going to grow through this. I'm not saying it's completely like an NGO or whatsoever. It's business, but I think AI has to be something we share as human being. It's a bit of Che Guevara from me here, but I really believe this. I think winning is also allowing more people to join the table, and I think this is what we're going to do with SCORE.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely what we need to be utilizing AI for. I think everyone gets so scared when you say AI in a general conversation. I think anyone in tech, we get all excited, but anyone else out there, it's always concerned about, people's jobs and humanity, but actually utilizing it for good and help reducing the time or access data we wouldn't have time to even analyze. As you're saying, like, you're not going to be able to hire enough human beings to analyze the type of data you're talking about. So that's when AI really is necessary. Now we've had a good insight into the tech side of things, and showcasing a little bit about the sport. I think it's time for, potentially my favourite part as well. Let's talk football. I'm just going to add in as well, I am a big Arsenal fan, so my dad was very excited about this interview today. So let's bring SCORE's football consultant, that is Brian McDermott. Brian, welcome.
Lily, nice to speak to you. How are you?
Lovely to speak to you as well. Yeah, I did text my dad yesterday and he was very delighted because he is a big Gooner. We're all from Islington, so big fans. But what drew you to SCORE, and how do you see data shaping the future of the game?
Well, what drew me to SCORE is I knew Nigel Grant. He's one of the co-owners, and he just asked me to come and have a chat, and I had a chat. And then I met the guys and we talked about data. And I worked with a data company at Arsenal when I was international senior scout for them. And it's that DNA. And so I kind of knew data, and I was a scout that traveled and watched games in different countries all over the world. And I was in the middle, sort of. I believe in data. I think data can be something that filters so much for us so quickly. And I believe in scouting. So for me, with the company, it's not about, okay, this is a binary world and it's a competition to see who wins. It's about scouting, working with data, and data talking to scouting, and vice versa, and having connection and communication. And that's what these guys have got. and they're good guys. I'm an old bloke now, and I'm not going to work with people that I don't want to work with. And I enjoy working with. There's a real hunger and desire, and there's a goodness about them, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I think where all the guys were saying about their variety of backgrounds and how something like this excited them to come together. It wasn't like you wanted to build a business. What exactly should we build? It's like, wow, there is this opportunity and we can all come together and make change. And it's obviously you guys are all friends, you've known each other, and that kind of makes it even more special in such a great industry like football as well, which is all about the bringing people together, which is definitely super exciting. So why don't we now take a little bit of a deep dive into the 2024 and 2025 season? What was the big standout things from this season?
Well, the big standout thing for me was Arne Slot turned up and wasn't expected to do anything really. That was the narrative at the start of the season. And he just went in and he tweaked a few things. He's obviously had a good squad. A really good communicator, was demanding, and they ran away with the league. The standout thing for me was what has happened to PSG in the last year and a half, where the manager has changed the whole dynamic of a football team. When you had the massive stars that were playing for PSG, they've got massive stars now, but they play as a group and they play as a team. That team that they've got now, that will be that people will attempt to copy that style of football in the next year. You will see it. You will see it, and I loved it. I mean, I was we were messaging each other, Max, Nigel, and I during that game, and I was sat there watching this game, and I don't normally get carried away with football, but when I saw that, I thought, wow, that is what winning is about, and it's not about winning at all costs. Look, we all want to win, but it's about the joy of winning and doing it the right way and finding a way to win. And that man, what he's gone through, their manager, well, I have got so much admiration for him. And that's a manager that's absolutely done it. He's done it. He's changed the dynamics of that club. And he'll probably change the dynamics this season for the way football's played.
Yeah, I mean, this could be something that Score can be utilised for, analysing exactly how they play and how that can be implemented in other teams, right?
100%. We're talking about that, how they're playing. So, let's get wingers and strikers that can play the way they can. We talked recently about beating a low block. How do you beat a low block? If you watch the game, the final, with Crystal Palace and Crystal Palace beating Manchester City, I think Man City had 70% of the ball, but he didn't beat the low block. They hit on one counter attack. Crystal Palace won the game, because if you watch what PSG did, they set up 1v1s all over the pitch and they attacked the opposition and they destroyed Inter. They absolutely destroyed them. So look, no one can criticize Manchester City, but on the day it was slow. It was too slow, and it was just so. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens this year in the Premier League.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about Chelsea's journey under Enzo Maresca?
Well, that's a similar one. That's an interesting one as well. They're going to have to find, because they play a certain type. It's very, very possession-based football, which is fine. PSG play possession-based football, but it's quicker. So I would imagine Maresca would be someone who knows that they have to find a way to do things quicker, but possession-based. So that's going to be an interesting journey. And look, they're at the start of their journey. They've been a couple of years now trying to invest in younger players coming through. I think they could potentially do really well this year.
Yeah, Brian, I had a question about, obviously I have the opportunity, I would say, to kind of text you about games when we were watching them. But I remember we had a great conversation about Man United and the system. And I know you have a strong opinion on what's happening over there. So I'd love you to share this with all the people who are going to watch this podcast.
Yeah, so I think in football, for me, it is about finding a way to win, especially if you are Man United, because Man United historically win. They win and they find a way to win, and they've done it in the last minute of games with Ferguson. They've done it so many times in the Champions League in 19...
Fergie time.
Yeah, Fergie time. But they also changed. They could play counter-attacking football. They could play 4-4-2. They could play 4-3-3. They could play 4-1-2-3. They could play all sorts of different systems. Now, what's really interesting to me is they've gone with a manager who plays 3-4-3. That's it. That's what they do. And actually, I saw something that Carlo Ancelotti said recently, and he said the most important thing about football is finding positions that players are comfortable to play in. I'm looking at Man United, I'm thinking they don't look comfortable. And that doesn't make... Now, look, who am I to criticise Man United Alma on it, But having said that, they're not winning football matches. And I've been a football manager, and I know what happens if you don't win football matches. You just have to find a way to win. And even if he decided to change to try to get a result with a different formation, no one would criticise him for that. But to keep going the same way with the same system, it just seems like madness to me.
Don't you think there's a Pep kind of influence on this? Not us. I know he's not trying to play that Pep, but I think people are I would say overpricing the impact of a philosophy. Like it's like everyone now wants to kind of leave a mark as I play like this, so it's Pep way of playing. Also, we all know that Pep is going to stay in the history books, because I think the real reason is because he won a lot, not because he was playing a certain way. Because I think if you deep dive into the games, he was smart enough to kind of move stuff when it didn't work. But don't you think there's a problem around this, like trying to be the new Pep? Well, I'm not specifically talking about Amorim. I'm talking about like in general.
Yeah, listen, it could be anybody. So for me, there's an issue here. The issue is it more important to be the brand? So the manager is the brand, not the team. So a manager can go in, and you could argue that it happened at Spurs. The manager had a certain brand of playing, and that's how he was going to play. Russell Martin, who's now gone to Rangers, has a certain brand of playing. When he went to Southampton, he never changed that brand of play, and he didn't. And I love Russell Martin. I think he's a great guy. But for me, I'm looking at that. If I'm sat with Russell Martin, and I don't think it would change, his brand is what it is, and he's probably got a job off the back of what's happened at Rangers. But he's going to Glasgow Rangers now. Now, I worked at Hibernian last year as director of football, and I know that country, and you have to win if you're at Glasgow Rangers. That's true. Football club.
I think my favorite quote from Ancelotti was during an interview, and a journalist was asking him about of his way to play, or style of playing in formation. He just said winning. What's your style? He just answered winning, and I think it says a lot. I think you have to be pragmatic, and that's also the reason why I'm excited about AI entering this space, is because maybe at some point that conversation is going to happen between a manager and his computer, and then he's probably going to figure out that some stuff has to be changed for the good, for the team to win games.
Well, what is quite interesting for me, from a manager's perspective, and I've stood on a line a lot, sometimes during a game you can't see the wood for the trees. Things are going on, and you're hearing all the fans, and it's changed make a substitution, make this, and there's a lot going on. If you had something that was objective and say, look, this is what our machine is telling us. This is what could happen if we do this. That's something that if you have an open mind, you might go, okay, let's have a look at that and see how that works. Now that's a little bit in the future. But that's something that could actually help. Sometimes you just need to step away. Sometimes you need to step away and just say, okay, let's just step away from this and let's just look at it. Because when there's 40, 50,000 people there, it's difficult to, you have to keep a cool mind. And something like something where if people are feeding you, this is what it's saying, this is what it's saying. It sounds a little bit far-fetched, but that could be something that could really work.
It's so great to hear things from different perspectives as well. I think definitely from fans' perspective to managerial perspective to players' perspective, it is really important. So now let's shift a little bit to the Club World Cup, which is currently happening. Max, what role can score play in tournaments like this?
I would say tournaments like these are, like super new. It's a completely new setup. You're not really used to at that stage of the year, because remember, most of like all the type of tournaments like this are mostly happening early in the season. This one is happening at the end of the season, so it's quite new for teams. I think we're going to try to first learn a lot about how oppositions went, and try to understand if, physical form played a role and other type of data points. I think this is very experimental for us. I'm not going to jump on, into these conversations and saying we figured it all. But also it's just happening once in, every 4 years. So I think it's more like of a typical World Cup. You need to find other features within your model to understand what is the real differentiator. And it couldn't be just the recent form, I think. So let's see how it goes. Obviously, being a French guy, still celebrating the PSG, in Champions League. I want PSG to win it. Even if I'm not a PSG fan, but just French people, them. So yeah, this is pretty much that. But yeah, completely experimental, I would say. So yeah. Yeah, we'll learn a lot from that.
I know, Brian, that you've been watching. So what have you been seeing so far?
Yeah, well, it's the first game. You into Miami, you expect like a goal fest, and it's always the same in the first game. You always have a great expectation. It turns out to be a 0-0 draw, and that's exactly what happens. You see that in the World Cup competition. So what I've seen is the teams are they're putting strong teams out. If you looked at the two teams that PSG and Atletico Madrid put out, I mean, there was only 2 changes from the Champions League final for the PSG team that played in that final. So that tells you how seriously these guys are taking it. And you can, I don't know, when did PSG play in the Champions League? It was 3 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like anyone's had a break this year.
Well, there's a reason for that. No one's had a break. And that's the thing, when I used to play, we used to have 8 weeks off, and I used to come back sort of half a stone overweight. But that doesn't happen anymore. Those days have gone massively. And you do look at it and you think, wow, how can these guys keep going? And it's the same players playing. So it is quite incredible, really. Obviously, we saw the Bayern Munich game. I watched the Bayern Munich game versus Auckland. And, wow, no one wants to see a 10-0. I believe, anyway, at that level of football, no one wants to see that. And sort of Auckland have they had their inaugural season last season, and they did brilliantly last year, and then they go and get smashed 10-0 by Bayern, and everyone in the world won't particularly know Auckland as a team, but they're growing and they get a big fan base. They've got a big fan base, and I felt for them. I really felt for them.
Brian, what do you think went wrong there? Because Auckland, I know the league here in Oceania, and they're top of the league, they're a decent team. What do you think went so wrong for them? Because they shouldn't have been beaten 10-0. I mean, properly beaten, but not at that degree.
Yeah, no, you look at something like that, Bayern got a little bit of momentum. They scored early doors. I mean, look, individually, the players of Bayern are better than Auckland. We know that we knew that before the game. And then, I think that sometimes when it's going against you, you have to find a way to not concede a goal and put your ego to one side. But Auckland are trying to play out from the back. I mean, they were at 9-0 down. They're still trying to play out from the back. Now, that's fine if you want to lose another goal, because the confidence is going from the defenders and the team and the midfield players. They don't want to get on the ball. And, when you're in a situation like that, and I have been in that situation as a player and a manager, play direct, go up the pitch, get the team up the pitch, and get as far away from your goal as you possibly can, to not concede, because the last thing you want to do is to get a massive defeat like that. So, it's all well and good talking about philosophies, but philosophy goes out. Mike Tyson said it once: it's already going into a ring, it's fine, and everything's sorted out technically until you get punched on the nose. And it's the same in football. If you go into a game and things start to going against you, you have to find a way to stop what's happening and change momentum. And they didn't do it.
Yeah, and for you, Brian, do you think as well, 10-0 Bayern, it really shows how serious they're taking this competition? I mean, this is not pre-season for anyone. This is actually serious football.
No, look, you could see how serious they were taking it. As soon as I saw the team sheet, I thought, wow, they're taking it serious, And Thomas Muller scored 2 goals, and it was great. And the one he didn't score, which was unbelievable, was Harry Kane. He came off after 61 minutes. Who would have thought it? He came off, I think it's 6-0, and he didn't score a goal. But that's unusual. He probably scored the winner in a game that they win 1-0 because that's Harry Kane. But one thing that I found really, I followed his Michael Olise. What a player this kid is. He went to an awful lot of clubs in England, and there was a lot of talk about him not being this and not being that, and he's turning himself into an absolute superstar.
Maybe if we'd have had Score and they were able to actually analyse it, people in the UK might have realised how good of a player he was and incorporated him into the squads.
Well, do you know what? That might be the case, but I think with Elise, it was more of what you called a character thing. It was more how they felt he was off the pitch. I always believe everyone's different, and you have to work out what that person's all about, and you have to find out about them. What I've seen in the past, especially in the past, is players being discarded because he's not a good guy, he's not this and he's not that. Just find out about him. Find one-to-one conversations are important. All of these things, and I think he fell into that category when he was in England. But look at him now; he's turned himself into a top player.
And PSG and Atletico, how did you feel about that match?
Well, you've got one of the best defensive, organised, structured team in the world against one of the most potent attacking teams. So you'd think, well, if it was 1-0 either way, you'd probably think, yeah, that's about right. And then PSG did a job on them. Obviously Atletico lost a man and a guy was sent off. But Simeone is a serious character. He's a serious manager. He will not want to get beat 4-0 by anybody. And he's the archetype, sets up his team 4-4-2. They all know their jobs. They all know what's required. They're super organised. And PSG were that far in front of them. So it augurs well for a dynasty of football for the next 2 or 3 years for PSG.
Yeah, for sure. And a shout out for anyone that's in the blockchain space. PSG did announce when I was at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas that they're going to be doing a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which is big anyway, to show how big blockchain is to some of these clubs. But looking ahead, we have lots of top European teams in this competition. They're going to be playing this week. What are you expecting to see from Chelsea, Dortmund, Man City? We have Real Madrid. It's going to be epic. So what are you really thinking is going to happen?
It's exciting. I mean, people can't get enough of football nowadays. They want to see it, 24/7 every day of the week. And some of the transfers are exciting. Trent going to Real Madrid and playing his first game for Real Madrid. There's a guy called Rayan Cherki who's just signed for Manchester City from Lyon. He's 20 odd years of age, and I know this kid from when I was scouting for Arsenal years ago. He was thought of as the character wise, it was a little bit, people looked at his character. Last year he got 8 goals and 11 assists for Lyon. He could be someone really, really interesting for Manchester City, someone different, and that's a player to look out for City. Chelsea, obviously Chelsea's Chelsea, and they're still adding to their squad, and you will see all of these teams putting out strong teams. And if you think about it, 6 to 7 months ago, everyone was complaining about it. No one's complaining now when they're there and they're in Miami and they're playing.
Yeah, it's also really interesting to see how much America is adopting what we call football, they call soccer. But do we think that some of their teams could be having good performances in this tournament as well? So LA and Miami.
Obviously Miami have got the greatest player in the world. So yeah, and actually last year I went over to California to a friend of mine, Lucy Rushton, was CEO at Bay FC, the ladies team. Wow, blew me away. The facilities blew me away. The level of football blew me away. The amount of people in the ground blew me away. For the ladies, it was incredible. The press, the media, the interest it was going on in America for that. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the States regarding football, and it's great to see.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to see some great players coming out of the States as well, and then bringing it back to score again. That the ability of being able to watch those games and analyze them all the way from the UK as well, and be picking on what future stars are coming out the US will also probably be a really big thing, especially with college soccer and things like that.
Well, you've got that, and you've also got the South American leagues where you've got all the South American leagues where they can't come straight into this country. Go to America, and then possibly they can be scouted from the MLS to come to a team in Belgium, to come to a team in England, if that's going to be how it works. But I like the MLS. I like the fact that they're going into the places that they're going into, and they're signing for these clubs, and they're getting. It's just it's a good little match there. I like the MLS league. I really do.
It's a big week in football. Tim, what are you looking forward to as well?
I'm looking forward to. I think it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I always find Club World Cup to be fascinating, especially now with so many teams that are playing in it. Like, I mean, the Auckland game was interesting. I mean, technically they're like a semi-professional team. And then you got against Bayern Munich, obviously, being complete sort of monsters in the Bundesliga. But I think what I'm looking forward to is, like, I mean, the Chelsea LA game is going to be interesting insofar as, like, seeing British football and this sort of emerging American style of football, even though heavily influenced by the British style, but also South America. I find it fascinating seeing these different teams from very different leagues playing against each other, and those different styles. That's why I enjoy, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
And how about Liam Delap? What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting one. I was thinking about him earlier, actually. He's going to be an interesting one. Does he get gobbled up by that number 9 shirt if he wears it? I don't know. I don't know what shirt he's going to wear at Chelsea, and the goes to the past of the Drogbas and the Costas and the people like that. I think it's a good signing on paper. Can he go there? And is he big enough to handle the shirt? Is he big enough to handle the pressure that comes with playing for Chelsea? And when you do scouting, for example, that's something. And I was at Leeds United as a manager, and I didn't realise how big that badge was. I realised it, obviously, but I thought playing at Ellen Road, loads of people there every week, fantastic support. Some players find it difficult to play in those environments, and that might be the same at Chelsea. So yeah, if he can handle it and everything that goes with it, I think technically, physically, he's got everything to be a top centre forward.
Yeah, handling that pressure, it is actually true. It's a big stadium, a big stage to be in front of, and yeah, can they actually perform and be in that environment?
No, totally. And listen, I played for a big club, Arsenal, and that wasn't that wasn't one of my strengths, is handling. I know a lot more now at 64 than I did at 17, but I probably wouldn't be very good at 64 playing for Arsenal now.
I don't know. You might be able to fit in our squad.
I doubt it very much, but you never know.
That's a wrap on episode 1. We've met the minds behind Score, uncovered some of the tech, and looked at how data is transforming sport. Max, before we go, what can the Score community expect in the next 6 months?
And so if you know about how we operate, I think the Score community should just, hang around our X accounts mainly, and, our social media channels. They're probably expecting something for next week, not in 6 months. So that gives you kind of a breath of how things are moving in our ecosystem. But I would say in 6 months, we're going to see more end products. I think this is like the real thing people need to be understanding, is that it took us a bit of time. Obviously, it went way faster than in the typical Web2 world, but it took us a bit of time to put on the scaffolding, from an AI perspective. I think the team has done an amazing job from both an AI perspective, but also, I would say, let's say an API, like a bridge perspective to real customers. We've announced our first customer, and I think within the next 6 months, we're going to keep announcing new Web2 companies working for us. I think what I really want people to keep in mind is that this is not a Web3 play, this is not a Web2 play, it's completely irrelevant. We are a proper AI company that figured out that using Bittensor was a way for us to move way faster to achieve our product market fit. The beauty of our tech is that there are multiple products, so instead of trying to build them all, we're going to onboard the right persons to build them. But as you can see, we know how to surround ourselves with the right people. I mean, I love working with Brian, love working with our team. Peter's doing an amazing job, and I think in the next 6 months we're just going to repeat the same recipe, bringing brilliant people, trying to build good products. So yeah, let's expect them to bring good products that are going to leverage the infrastructure we're building.
If you want to get involved, head to scorevision.io, join our Discord, or follow us on X. Thanks for listening, and I'll see everyone next time.